If you're ever sentenced to life imprisonment, chances are you'll be locked up here.
It is, in a sense, the English version of Alcatraz.
HMP Wakefield.
Biggest maximum security prison in the whole of Western Europe.
Here, you'll join the worst prisoners in British criminal history.
Weirdos, bad sex cases, rapists, serial killers.
You'd be in a cell next to the prison system's most violent inmates.
He's taken governors hostage, he's taken staff hostage, he's taken other prisoners hostage.
Or in solitary with a 4-time murderer.
He likes killing, and he will kill you.
Or you could even come face to face with child killers.
I've seen so many of them get stabbed, scalded, some occasions killed.
You'll be governed by the toughest screws.
If there wanted to be a problem, it was dealt with firmly.
Endure the harshest regime.
I felt that we were being psychologically murdered.
And you'll live with men who have no chance of being released.
The only way he's going to come out of jail is in the coffin.
This is the inside story.
I wanted to grab him and shake the daylights out of him.
From those who are incarcerated.
I was placed into a subterranean cage.
Those who work here.
If a prisoner can injure him in any way, shape or form, they will do it.
And those who know the truth.
He told me in a letter that given the chance, he would kill again.
Welcome to the place they call Monster Mansion. Welcome to HMP Wakefield, one of Her Majesty's Category A prisons. Tucked away off the M1 in a West Yorkshire city centre, this 400-year-old top security jail is arguably the worst place in Britain.
That's Wakefield Prison in all its glory. That's the place I worked for several years. Biggest maximum security prison in the whole of Western Europe.
It's an old Victorian prison, you know, extremely high walls, looks pretty austere.
It's very foreboding. If you walk round it, for example, it really does send a shiver down your spine because there's nothing. It's unrelentingly gloomy. It is, in a sense, the English version of Alcatraz.
And like in Alcatraz, sentenced to life here, you'll have been convicted of the most heinous of crimes.
Wakefield is known colloquially as the Monster Mansion. Its purpose to house the people that we fear as a society the most.
There was just over 700 prisoners in there. Vast majority of them were doing life. Incredibly dangerous inmates who weren't fit to be out.
You've got the so-called celebrity criminals. You've got Charles Bronson, Harold Shipman, Robert Maudsley. You've got the dregs of society.
Levi Belfield, killer of Millie Dowler and 2 other women. Jeremy Bamber, guilty of White House Farm killings. Roy Whiting, the killer of Sarah Payne. I hesitate to use the word, but I sort of believe it. It's a dustbin, a warehouse for the worst. It is asked to house people we do not know what to do with and for which we have no other place to send them. And to some extent, Wakefield is the symbol of lock 'em up, throw away the key.
And keeping everyone locked up in here is the job of over 200 Wakefield screws. And they've got their work cut out.
In an establishment like that, high security establishment, your first challenges are always about security and about keeping order. Especially when you consider that the prison is in a city centre, people aren't always keen to have a prison in their midst, so the public has to be reassured that these prisoners are not going to escape.
It is very, very secure prison. The walls, they're about 25 feet tall, and on the top of the walls, there's got an emplacement on which like an archway, which is hollow on the inside, and it's painted with a specific paint which doesn't basically dry. Behind that you have razor wire, so it's virtually impossible for any inmate to get over that wall. It's never happened since Wakefield has been a Cat A prison that any inmate has ever escaped.
There are 3 types of category A's. At the very top, you have exceptional risk category A's. At the very top, you have exceptional risk category A's. That would be the likes of terrorists. Then you have high risk category A's, robbers, armed robbers, or gang bosses and people like that. And then you have standard category A, which is just that you've committed a very, very serious and possibly violent crime.
If you're being sent to a prison for Category A inmates like Wakefield, as soon as you're sentenced, it's in the van and on your way to do your time.
If you are a Category A prisoner, it's perfectly possible that you will be transferred under armed escort up the motorway to Wakefield Prison.
You get to the prison, then they take you out one by one, march you in through reception, where the cuffs are taken off.
You would expect to be searched, what in those days we called a strip search, now euphemistically known as a full search.
You have to squat to see if you've got anything up your bum.
They're given sterile clothing. They get told what's expected of them.
Then you'll be marched up onto the wing. You'll see all the people on your wing. They'll be shouting, screaming, people running about. And then everyone will look at you as you come in order to see who it is. Then you'll be shown your cell. You get a bit of water, close the cell door, unless you bang up till the next morning.
And as you settle in for your first night, you'll most likely be bedding down in a cell near to one of the prison's most reviled criminals.
Wakefield has a particular reputation as a place which has an over-concentration of offenders or prisoners who in any other jail would have to be held in solitary confinement for their own protection.
It certainly has more, for want of a better word, dodgy Category A prisoners.
What prisoners refer to as nonces, or sex offenders, or people in prison for serious crimes against women and children.
Wakefield is where the word nonce for sex offender actually originated. What they used to do in the old days, the only way to distinguish for the staff who was a sex offender and was not to be opened with the rest of the prisoners was they had a slate board outside each cell with your name and number, and they would put the letters N-O-N-C-E, nonce on it, which actually meant not on normal courtyard exercise. So when the staff came round to unlock everybody for exercise and let them out, when they see nonce on the door, they would leave them locked up, because they knew if they let them out, the other prisoners would attack them. So it became the word, the universal word for sex offenders, well, certainly in Britain, it became nonce.
One of Britain's most notorious sex offenders serving life in Wakefield Prison is Roy Whiting, convicted of abducting and murdering 8-year-old Sarah Payne.
The image of Roy Whiting that always sticks in my mind is of this pale-faced, gaunt-looking man with lank hair who lived alone.
When Sarah went missing from a field in West Sussex, the entire nation came to a standstill.
The investigation into the disappearance of Sarah Payne is still officially a missing persons inquiry. But today, 12 days after the 8-year-old went missing here in Sussex, police gave their strongest indication yet that they believe she's been abducted.
Sarah's mum and dad begged for the safe return of their daughter as search teams scoured the countryside. But hope turned to despair when Sarah's body was found after an agonising 2-week wait for news.
As soon as Sarah disappeared, the police went to look for all those people on the sexual offenders register who lived in the region. And Whiting was, of course, one of them. He had a history of sex offences, a known paedophile.
Roy Whiting was sent to Wakefield Prison, where he's serving life with a minimum term of 40 years.
It was probably inevitable that Roy Whiting would be sent to Wakefield. He satisfied so many of the criteria. His crime was heinous, he was a sex offender, and he was also a convicted murderer.
When Whiting arrived at Wakefield, he soon found that he wasn't welcome.
Sex offenders and people who abuse women and children are hated far more deeply and irreconcilably in prison than they are out here in the wider community.
I've seen so many of them get stabbed,